I'm Brian Nash from How We Got Here Genealogy, and in this video I'm going to talk to you a little bit about primary sources and information that you can use from it to help fill out your family tree. Back in my video here on starting your family tree, I provided a template for starting a basic family tree going back 4 generations to your great-grandparents. This is a kind of a little fancier version of my family tree. You'll see myself, 2nd generation my parents, 3rd my grandparents, and 4th my great. So I want to use as my example here. This is from Nova Scotia because all my great grandparents lived in Nova Scotia. All but one was born there, and all 4 of them died there. This is really just an example. You don't have to be from Nova Scotia, but this is one of the things when you're looking for your resources, your sources there. You're going to look for the local area, the local jurisdiction for the area you're looking from. One of the things to take note is often they have limits on what they have. They try not, in most cases, not to have records that would identify living people. So on this site, I'm really just going to kind of show you the information you can get from different types of records. We're over the 3 basics. You have your birth, your marriage, and your death. Those things give you the key points in a person's life, and the idea is to fill them in. You're not going to get necessarily the actual records of all of those things. For instance, some of my great-grandparents, I cannot find a birth record or a marriage record. All my great-grandmothers died after 1970. I did, but the 2 that I'm going to sort of look at and talk about today, their death records aren't here. So to find information on that, I would use a secondary source. But we're talking about primary sources today, so we're going to look at the actual records and how you can use the information there, not just to get the information you need for that particular person, but to build and get further. I'm going to go right to my grandparents in on them, but you'll see Andrew and Florence. Her actual name is Charlotte. So I'm going to bring up their marriage record. So here we are with my grandparents' marriage certificate. It has a lot of great information. It tells me all about the wedding, it gives the date, the things you would expect, the location. But I said one of the things is not just to get that information about the individual. You often in these different types of records, you will find information about other members of your family. In this case, as you will see, after the basic information about my grandfather, it goes into his father's place of birth, and then his mother with her maiden name, which is a really good thing to have because often you might not be aware of a maiden name, especially as you move back. Again, this is not going to be in every place, it's not the same, but these are the type of things that you are looking for. So you're going to look for information on the parents that you might not have. The same thing with my grandmother. You'll see that it has her information there on her parents, again with her mother name and maiden name. This one here also gives their racial origin. Both are listed as Scottish. So that's really great piece of information. That's in this type of marriage record. So we're going to look at a couple other records from the Nova Scotia site and on a couple of my other relatives on that side of the family. So here is an example of a death record. Again, there's lots of great information here on the person that you have the record for. In this case, this is my great-grandfather, my father's father. So again, I have really good information. It has some information about him, about his cause of death, when he died, the information you'd expect to find on a death record. So it doesn't just have that, but as I said, we're looking for information we can find out about other people in our family tree. So if I show you here, it has a few things. This is another great thing. If you're not sure the date of birth, it also has his date of birth. So in his case, I can't find a birth a birth record, but I do have his date of birth here. He died in 1940. He was 54 years, 7 months, and 5 days. Again, this is a good example of an individual record. It's a lot of great information. I have his wife's name. It doesn't have her maiden name there, but it does just have hers. This is a way I do know it's the right person. If I hadn't known it, there's also usually what's called informant. That's the person who provides all this information to the registrar. I could look at that and see if that's also somebody that I know. In this case down here is the informant, and that was his brother, Chaz or Charles. And so I know that is a member of the family. It gives me a lot of information here as well. We have his father's name, James Anderson, and his father's place of birth, Sydney Mines, and I have his mother's name with his maiden name again and her place of birth. So really great information if you don't already have it. So we've looked at a death certificate and a marriage certificate, which are really great pieces of information. Often birth certificates can be hard to find, and if you don't know the date of birth, parents' names, etc., it can be harder to find to make sure you have who you're looking for, especially if you're dealing with a common name. These were two examples of records that are for an individual and just has the individual information. In a lot of the older records, which I find is very common, you'll find it in a book sort of format where it lists multiple people on the same page. So we're going to look at a couple of those. This is an example of one done in a book. This is the marriage record of my same great-grandfather that we just looked at his death certificate, and so Arthur Anderson and his wife Elizabeth. She is listed here as Lizzie. They are the first. I'm going to just sort of zoom in a little so we can get the information that's there. Look at this. The first thing we have is the date, and you'll see there's actually a sequential number. So if I was to find the pages of the book before, it would be number 30. So we have when, where, and how married. And again, this is very similar on most ones I've seen have been similar. Similar type of information, even when I've looked at ones from other country, often laid out the same sort of way. So we have their date of marriage, date February 1910, and this by L means by license. Sometimes in some places you might see ban, which is just a practice that they do where they announce for consecutive weeks. It's usually 3 that there's going to be these two people are getting married and the date. So it has the place and it has the type of church. You'll notice there's other types here. So this isn't just from one church. This is an actual register. So we have their names and we have their ages and their condition. Now, B and S. B means bachelor, S means spinster. In this case, under denomination, they don't have anything listed. Interesting enough, we have minor here. That was my great-grandfather's profession. It was actually all his family, the Andersons that came before him to Cape Breton, they all were miners. That's the purpose they came here from Scotland. His wife, she came to Canada in 1905 when she was 13 years old, and her father was a miner as well. So now it has where they lived when at the time of marriage. They have number 6. If you remember on my grandfather's on the weddings, for him it had that he was born in Donkin. Donkin is also called number 6. It's really good when you're doing this, if you're not sure about places, start finding information, because often place names have changed, or descriptions. My great-grandmother's listed as being born in Edinburgh. That's not quite true. She was actually, which I'll show you in the next bit, is she was born in a suburb or a community just outside Edinburgh called Midlothian. It has her parents' names and his parents' names there, so James and Annie, which is the same as we saw on his death certificate. And we have my grandmother's parents' names, just the first names, Robert and Lizzie. We would know that their last name is Baxter's. It would be nice at this point if it had her maiden name, but we can find that out in other places. And the last thing here, again, it has professions for them. There's nothing filled in. James was a miner as well. Possibly he was retired at this time. And Robert was a miner, and at one point, after he came over to Canada, he did run a farm for a while. It then gives the two witnesses and the reverend who married them. So that's an example of a marriage certificate that is done in a book format as the registry. So we're going to now look at a death certificate that's done that way. So to get a good example of a death certificate that's done in this format, I actually went one generation beyond my great-grandparents to my second great-grandfather, Farquhar Campbell. And so this is his death certificate or registration. Again, this is in a book format. So he's about halfway down the page. So I have his name, his sex, his age when he died, his marital status, where he was born. He was born in Scotland, but has both his parents' name there, John and Flora Campbell, and his occupation. This is really hard to see, even if I zoom in on it, just because the way people wrote back then, it's hard to tell if that is a tailor or a sailor. So it has his parents' name, it has when he died and where. Malagawach tells why he died. So he died of asthma. This person here was the informant. B. McIntosh has the date, and this here in the final column where it says L. McDonald is the register who registered it, or the deputy register. So there's an example of a book format of a death certificate or death registry. So I said I was also going to look at my great-grandmother from Scotland, so we're going to go quickly there, and we're going to go to the site I use for that, which is called Scotland's People. So Scotland's People is great if you have family from Scotland. It's their national archives. It's their record source. Again, very much similar things that you are going to be looking for. It also gives you other things that you can look for. It has church record censuses. Has legal records here. Kirk sessions. These are like minutes of church meetings. So lots of great things. The thing with this site, it is a paid site. And actually, a lot of sites are when you're looking for the original records. The Nova Scotia site used to be $10 per record to download a copy. There's more if you wanted them to print you one and send it to you. The way Scotland's People works is for £7.50. You buy 30 credits. Each record, at least for the BMDs, the birth, marriage, and deaths, are 6 credits. So for that 30, you get five records. So it's actually not too bad for £7.50. You're looking at £1.50 for each record. So still a better deal than when Nova Scotia used to be 10 and some other places that I've seen. It's good that it works on a credit system, so you're not having to constantly pay for each individual one. I think that helps keep the price down. Anyway, so we're going to search for a birth certificate for my great-grandmother. As I said, I actually already have it searched. One of the great things here on Scotland's People, you actually get to save your searches. So besides downloading them, which I recommend all your records, always download them, print a copy. It's up to you, but I do both on most records because I like to keep printed copies, and I sort of keep them filed, and I also keep a digital copy. A good little tip is when you make a digital copy. No matter what the record is, what you want to do is you want to get some information. So besides naming that record, when what I do is I create a little notepad file in the directory that I store these particular records in. I will organize them by family usually, and I keep one notepad record, and I will have the actual site or location that I got them from. So I have here my grandmother's great grandmother's birth certificate. So I'm going to view it, and you'll see the record stored there. So I would take that URL and I would save it. Besides downloading it, so we're going to look at here. We're going to zoom in. Again, this is similar to the book style that we would have saw for the marriage and death that we just looked at. We have Elizabeth Baxter here, my great grandmother. This is her birth on December 7th, and it gives a little bit of information here, her address, where she lived at the time. So if I go further over, it gives me her father, Robert Baxter, and what he did. He worked in a coal mine. He's a coal miner. Remember I said he is my grandfather's family, the Anderson family, were miners in Cape Breton from the time they went there. So was her father. It has her mother's name, but this is the nice part here. It has her maiden name, which is Kinnaird, and it gives a birth date for her mother. Did not have the birth date for her father. That could be he just didn't provide it. So we have, again, here, and this is the signature. This is, again, it's hard to read. What they list here is the signature and qualification of informant and the relation and residence if it was an at-home birth and in which the birth occurred. So if it was in a hospital, it would have the informant would probably be somebody from the hospital. It gives when and where registered. So we're going to go back down to her, and if we look at her, so this was registered on December 14th, and it gives the place, and it gives the register signature there. Again, that's a common thing you'll see on a lot of these book ones. Even the individual ones, there's a spot where whoever did the registration has actually signed to verify that the record was entered. And here's an extra sort of bonus one from the Scotland's people. This would be my fourth great grandfather and grandmother's, their wedding information. It was 1817. Tells me the place and the date. Has really limited information. Has Baxter and Peacock. That was his name. Her maiden name. Tells me James Baxter in the parish and Catherine Peacock in the parish. Gives the two parishes that they were part of. Gave in their names for proclamation in order to marriage. This is an example of a ban. So it's basically saying that this was read at the church, and it was just announcing their intention to marry. And this was done, like I said, most places it was traditional that it was 2 or 3 weeks, the Sundays before it would be announced at church. The idea that gave anybody might have some objection. The purpose of this, like I said, is you start to get not only information on those people, start filling out your family tree, but you get information about their relatives from their parents. Can be children's in some cases when you're looking at death certificates, or brothers or sisters, even if they've people that are signed as the informant. So there's a lot of great information there. And once you get working on these primary sources, you then get to piece all kinds of information and start to look for other secondary pieces of information to fill out the family story. For instance, if you look up here, there'll be a video about my great grandmother, Elizabeth Baxter, and for coming to Canada in 1905. Now that you have this information, keep looking for your ancestors, and I'll catch you in my next video.